get to laugh at a press conference. That don't happen very often. Well, we're only a couple weeks in, as you know, to the Big Ten season, but it's amazing that there's a bunch of teams at the top. I think everybody thought Wisconsin would run away, and I still think they're the best team, but when you look at a situation that we've been in with these injuries for 2 years, Wisconsin's been the opposite. Last year I don't think they had a hangnail, and that's what happens to some teams. But when you look at our league right now, there's a couple of surprises at the bottom, if you ask me, and there's a couple of surprises at the top, and yet it's only 4 or 5 games in, and there's a lot of basketball left to be played. And when you start looking at it nationally, I think you're seeing my point that it's, for some reason, I don't know if it's parity, I don't know if it's keeping guys focused, I don't know if it's my advertisement on the social media driving kids nuts, but there seems to be a little bit of this more this year than I've seen in a lot of years. For the most part, our defense has been very, very good other than parts of that Northwestern game. I mean, it's the lowest in my era as far as where we are now, field goal percentage, three-point field goal percentage. Rebounding hasn't been as good, all because of the Maryland game. I mean, we were a minus 16 in that game. Otherwise, we'd probably be up there plus 7, 8, which I didn't think this would be a great rebounding team, but it's done better than I thought. And I said something to you guys a couple weeks ago, I think before the Big Ten started. I quoted my football coach, Mark D'Antonio, said that your seniors have to play well if you're going to do well. And right now, as an example, our 2 seniors are playing awfully well, Trice and Dawson. Dawson's leading the league in rebounding. Trice is leading the league in assists to turnovers, steals. He's ranked scoring. He's ranked up in the top right now. Those 2 guys are playing very well. And yet we're entering a tough stretch now with 3 out of 4 on the road. It's been a unique, I think, couple things that have happened. This is the longest Michigan State has ever been off in my era. We were off almost a month. Usually Christmas break is, 20 days, 18 days, 21 days. And there's been goods and bads to it. This is also, I think, the first time that I've had 2 byes in the first 2 weeks of the season, or 2.5 weeks of the season, which I think this week it helps us a little bit, especially with our injuries, because we'll get a little healthier. And then it's going to be tough because we got a lot of games in a row. It'll be like an NBA schedule. But I think by then our players will be ready for that. I'm feeling like we're making some big progress with those next 4 games and 3 of them being on the road. I think this is a time we can come together and maybe make up for for that home loss, hopefully. Traveling to Maryland for the first time will be interesting. I've been there once before, not for a game, and I'm sure it'll be 4th of July and Christmas. Big weekend game, big TV game. I hear they're honoring Gary Williams, and so it'll be a festive day. And they're one of the leaders in the Big Ten in field goal percentage defense, and one of the biggest teams in the Big Ten. And it gave us a little bit of problems before, although the last game we shot 32%, they shot 33%, we shot 22 from the field, they shot 18. It wasn't our defense that let us down, it was a little bit our offense let us down, and uncharacteristically, we didn't get beat on the boards, we got killed on the boards. And I don't know, I didn't look it up just because I didn't want to feel worse than I already felt that day, but I would think that's one of the worst in my era. I don't know of anybody that out-rebounded us by 16. So if you ask me, what do we got to do this week? We got to rebound better. And another interesting stat was, they had 0 free throws the first half and 32 the second. So we got to defend without fouling. So rebound, defend without fouling, and then watch this topsy-turvy league kind of go crazy. I mean, I think it's been what I said. I still think the top dog is the top dog in Wisconsin. I don't think we're as strong at the top as we were last year, but I think we're a lot stronger in the middle and bottom than we were last year. When you look at Minnesota being 0-5, I'm telling you, Minnesota is a pretty good team. So I'll open it up for questions.
Tom, two-parter. First of all, you had your guys tested medically. Can you tell us how that went?
Yeah, Costello was fine. That was the big one. We were worried about him, and in Denzel, I guess what they found is, I guess they called it an ulcer on his throat, and that was creating some problems. But it looks like he's like 90% now. We were off yesterday. I think that was needed too. You know, we didn't have a lot of time off because during break you don't have to take it. And what do you do if you're sitting up here and there's no school? You know, that extra week we had off, in some ways, you know, helps you, but it kind of disorients you a little bit to have that much time off. So I think health-wise, Javon Best is the best he's been. He's not back to where he would be, but he's definitely now where he can practice. We're not worried about anything, and I think he's got a better comfort level. Alvin Ellis, I think, has to improve right now. We need him improving. And Dawson is supposed to be able to take the rest of the cast off, maybe for Saturday's game, if not, for sure, the start of the next week. But probably the biggest two was Costello and Valentine.
Secondly, this team, Tom, it reminds me a lot of Neitzel's in 07, his junior year, and the fact that you can beat anyone on your schedule, but you can't have more than one guy having a bad night, or you could lose to anyone on your schedule. Is that a fair analysis?
Yeah, I'd say it is, but I'm not sure. It's not that way right now in the country. You know, I don't know if it's parity. I don't know. It's changed since the night, so it's changed in the last 8 years that we're not capable of having a couple of our best players have bad nights, but I'm not sure Duke is. I watched. I'm not sure Kentucky is. I'm just not sure anybody is anymore. It's just not the parity that, I mean, there's just not the dominance of depth that there used to be. So, yeah, I think that's a very fair statement, and yet I wouldn't judge. We weren't great the other day defensively, but I swear to you, I said it after the game and after watching the film. Hey, give Northwestern credit. They played really good. I mean, really, really good. I'd be willing to say the best I think I've seen his team play in a couple of years he's been there. We knew they'd be good defensively. They only gave up 40%. But they hadn't shot like that, and they shot the ball well, and some of it was our fault, and some of it was their good shooting.
You talked about the top of the league. The bottom of the league, is this as strong as it's been? The two givens were supposed to be Northwestern and Rutgers just beat Wisconsin, and Northwestern gave you guys all you could handle. There really doesn't seem to be an off night. Usually there's at least somebody.
Yeah, and Penn State, who was so good, you know, have been snake bit. They've lost some close games. Minnesota, I think, has lost 5 games, and I think 4 of them have been by. Yeah, there you go. You got the stats. So when you look at it that way, as far as from a coaching standpoint on our side, the league's maybe as good as it's ever been because of what you just said. You know, maybe there were 5 teams that were better than the 5 that are on top, but there were nights off somewhere. I don't know where those nights are going to be off. And it's been compounded because some teams are going through what we've gone through for a couple of years. You know, Illinois loses its leading scorer and rebounder. Then you go to Wisconsin and he gets a concussion, and then it's a shame what happened to Jackson. I mean, senior year, you know, even a competitor hates to see a good kid go down like that. So that's going to, you know, affect them a little bit. Indiana gets Perea out now for a couple weeks. I mean, these kind of things that are happening, it's not only who you play, but it's when you play them and where you play them, you know, and when do they get guys back? Nebraska's had 2 guys out now for a long time. Now those guys are coming back, you know. So everybody's going through the same thing, you know, and you kind of learn in football when those injuries happen. You can look different at the beginning of the year and you look at the end of the year.
Ty, you touched on Northwestern shooting. I'm just wondering, did you feel any differently about that game after you really broke down the film, or was it the same assessment you had on Sunday?
Well, I was still disappointed that we have a 15 or 14 point lead and we're not mature enough to handle that. That is disappointing. I did not. I'll never feel good about that. But I think as I go back to our substitution pattern, we did a poor job. We're up 14, and within 4 minutes, that thing had changed, and then by halftime, it's tie game or whatever it was. And so I have to look at myself on that too and what we did. But the more I looked at it, the more I said, wow, I didn't see him hit those shots against other teams, and they played good. I mean, they ran their stuff well. They played good, and most of the time, I unfortunately blame us. I still got enough to blame us, but I do got to give credit to them that they played very well.
And then you talked about changing the starting lineup after that game. Have you done that in practice already?
We only had one practice since then, and we are maneuvering some guys around. I mean, I'm not making wholesale changes. If I make a change, which we'll probably decide by tomorrow, but if I do make a change, it is going to be strictly on the substitution pattern. Strictly. It'll be Morris Peterson, it'll be Kelvin Torbert, Chris Hill, it'll be Draymond as a sophomore. The starting guys are probably the best players right now. So somebody that's the best player may not start because I need a rotation, I need a scorer coming off the bench. I can't have 2 or 3 non-shooters in there at the same time, and I don't think anybody's minutes will change much, but the lineup could change for that reason and that reason only.
Come under elephants, and Spartans never forget. Having lost to Maryland
Don't
before,
use the word elephants when you're talking.
I'll try probably a bad choice of words. Having lost to them before, and maybe more significantly, getting handled on the boards, are you using that as high motivation for your team, challenging their manhood? Is this war drill time, or how does that fit into this mix?
Yes, sort of does. You got to be with the injuries that are going around. Everybody's a little more delicate and everything. But we had a good hard practice on Monday, and we had Tuesday off, and hopefully we'll have a hard one today, and then dial it down a little bit because we do have a rough stretch here with a number of games in a short period of time. So. We can't get beat on the boards like that, and we can't put a team to the foul line that gets 32 free throws in the second half in an overtime of a game. I mean, when we led more the second half than not, you just can't do that. So we have to do a better job, and those two things usually tell you that you were not dialed in, and or are not physically tough, and so I think we'll straighten out those two things. Now, whether we shoot it better, their size bothers us, they shoot it better, that's what it'll be. But I think this is one of the bigger games of the year so far, and it's going to be fun to see how we respond to that.
Tom, you have one of the stronger three-point shooting teams in the country for this year. You guys don't usually have that type of that type of shoot that type of percentage from three. Does it make you a little uncomfortable that you have a team that might be a little too reliant on shooting the threes?
Well, to be honest with you, Drew, we're going to run it off tackle a lot this year. Oh, this is the basketball one. I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, I'm just kidding you. It does kind of. It's a good way to put it because we all know you live by the three, you die by the three. And you do have those years when you shoot a lot of threes and it works out for you. Kentucky did it one time, and you see this year they're shooting 28 or 9% from the three. Louisville is where Rick was. But we have been a very good three-point shooting team for the most part, and I think it did hurt us in that one game. But at the same time, we're not taking an exorbitant amount. The last game, in fact, we probably took too few. We only took 11 or 13. For us, if we could keep that at 18, 19, even 20, that would be good. If we get 25, 26, 27, to me, that's not healthy for us. But as they say, it doesn't matter. I loved Urban Meyer's comments the other day when they were asking him about the quarterback and the running back in the post-game interview, the very first interview, and the first thing he said, "What did you think of my defense?" I think all coaches look at the same thing. Your defense can travel to different arenas. Your offense doesn't always travel as well. So that's the sad part about the Maryland game here. Our defense showed up, but as we tell our players, rebounding is the finished product of your defense. You can't defend and then give up an offensive rebound, because until you get the ball back in your hands, your defense isn't done. So as good as I thought our defense played in that game, statistically, we didn't finish each defensive possession, and consequently, we were in trouble. If you know me, I always love the football analogies, but you watch that game, and that running back from Ohio State got hit early in a lot of those possessions, but they didn't tackle as well. That was another thing he brought up. We tackled well. Well, hitting them is the defensive part. Tackling them is defense and rebounding part. You got to finish the job, and we didn't finish the job here. So I am concerned about, do we just turn into a three-point shooting team? I don't see that happening. We did it a little bit in a couple losses. We took some bad threes, I think, at Notre Dame. I think a couple bad threes against, not against Kansas. We just missed some layups there. Notre Dame was one that stands out. But I don't think until we start shooting a ton of them, Drew, that's a problem with this year's team. I feel pretty comfortable with the guys taking them, and I don't think we're hunting them. What we're trying to do a little better job is getting more threes that are inside-out threes instead of just passing them around. And the other thing good about when you rebound well, you run better. And I think if you look at a couple of games, we didn't run very well in the Maryland game. So now you're going up against 6'9", 6'10", 6'7" foot, and in a half-court setting, and I don't think that's healthy for anybody.
I'm wondering how much more assertive you've seen Gavin become on the offensive end, and is he kind of taken more of an offensive role for you guys in the last couple of
Gavin? He's going to get better, but it's not going to come overnight. He's getting his hook shot. He made a couple free throws. We're taking mini steps. He, too, though, our defense, he's unbelievable on ball screens. He's the best I've maybe ever had since Antonio Smith and Andre in that respect. He's just phenomenal on defense, defending those. Gavin's got we're working on him. It's kind of the black hole. When it goes in, it doesn't come out a lot either. He's got to become a better passer, and he's got to become a better two-hand rebounder. That's one thing Brandon Dawson has really improved on lately, is he's going after everything two hands, and so he's rebounding better. Gavin sometimes one-hand rebounds, but offensively, it's just getting those jump hooks down. That's where his range is right now. Rolling harder to the basket. I'd like to get a few more points, but if we can get 15, 16 points and 10, 12, 13 rebounds out of that position with the defense those two guys play, we got to look for other people to do more, because that's getting a pretty good chunk from what I was expecting to get out of that group. Now, as the year goes on, maybe they both improve. As the summer goes on, they take another giant step. But I'm pleased with both our centers, to be honest with you.
Anything else you want to do around table?
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you about, you mentioned earlier about not having the two buys early. How does that affect the rest of this? You have 9 games over the course of the next month and really no other buy after that.
Yeah, it's going to be a little tougher, but for this team, I would probably complain about it, except this team where they didn't have the normal Christmas because of the injuries we had. And I think we needed this week to try to get not only healthier, but get those bodies playing in practice. Zell didn't practice much, over a week of Christmas there. And so I'm just looking at it this time that it's beneficial for us. I might not feel that way in February. It doesn't really matter what I feel either way. I don't think they're going to change it for us. But I think this actually gives us the best chance to be successful and healthy. And we're really, that's my number one goal right now.